All right, it says that we are live. All right, everybody. We this is the first time we've been live in a while. There hasn't been a whole lot of football really to talk about. But there has been a lot going on in the world and in news. And uh and I wanted to bring on a friend of the show, Quincy Carrier. You guys know him. He is a fellow YouTuber, content creator, a guy that I've known for a couple years now, and a somebody who I've talked about before has been one of the primary reasons and a guy who inspired me to even create this channel. And I wanted to bring him on to talk about really what's going on right now, the movement that's happening in our country and all over the world. Quincy's a guy who's been outspoken about it, and we're going to talk and we're going to have a conversation about really the Black Lives Matter movement, equality, social justice, certain things like that, and we're going to talk about the Browns a little bit. So, Quincy, welcome back on the channel, and thank you for joining us.
Hey man, thank you for having me on.
Very welcome. All right, so before we get started, I want to kind of kick it off here by talking a little bit about really what I've been thinking about over the last couple weeks as we've been dealing with COVID, and as we've all kind of been impacted by what's happened with George Floyd and other issues throughout the country. And one of the things, if you follow me on Twitter, I tweet a lot. I would say it's fair to say, and
Yep.
and one of the things over the last couple of weeks, I don't even know if anybody's noticed, I haven't been as active, and I didn't want to come out and just be superficial and just say blank, this is how I feel. I didn't want to just check the box and go along with everything. I wanted to absorb it, and I wanted to sit back and learn and listen. And I think that the only way that you can really have a thoughtful and meaningful conversation with yourself about what it is about change and about what's going on is to sit back and shut up and let other people do the talking, and then express what you're feeling. And I think that's how change happens. And I think that having conversations can have a ripple effect. And people can share what's going on in their heart, and instead of being silent, really express it and get some change going on. I happen to have a small platform, a little bit of a platform. Quincy is a bigger platform on YouTube, and so I wanted to bring him on, and I want to talk to him about certain things like that, because the Browns themselves, Kevin Stefanski's come out and said, hey, for those of you who have platforms, and especially, obviously he was talking to his players and not to us YouTubers, but he's saying if you have a platform, you can talk about it, and you can have an open and honest and courageous conversation about things going on. So, Quincy, the first thing I wanted to ask, talk to us, give us some of your experiences. If you've experienced racism in your life, if you've experienced prejudice or anything like that, I want to hear what you've experienced.
Yeah, like when it comes to my experience with racism, it starts kind of from the beginning because some of you guys know, because it is on my website. I don't even updated my website in like 4 years, so I probably should get onto that. But I grew up in what is deemed now, especially one of the more unfortunate parts of Cleveland, which is kind of that Maple Heights suburb, around the Heights area. It's kind of changed in demographics as the years go on. Like, one of the biggest examples of just how the demographics have shifted, I always use this kind of a joke, but I played baseball growing up. A lot of us did. And I remember when I was like a kid going into elementary school, the baseball leagues would be full. You'd be able to get into a league. There'd be 12 teams, and then they started to move certain housing, Section 8 housing, into Maple Heights. They started to move a bunch of things in there, and then people went out. And then all of a sudden, by my freshman year of high school, there's like 2 teams, and the whole league has to fold because of the demographics have changed. People just don't play baseball, So it's all over the place when it comes to how you handle this in Cleveland and how this goes down in Cleveland. And I've had situations where I was walking back from a high school baseball game, but because I had a duffel bag on, somebody called the police on me and thought I was trespassing when I was walking down Libby Road, which is a major road in that city. And then I had like 4 police cars pull up on me, slam me on the hood, and pretty much just treat me like a criminal when it was pretty obvious that no crime had taken place and nobody had even really reported a crime. And there are instances like that. I always ask people, when you think about racism and racist incidents, that it's not always going to be like how you see in the movies, right? Where it's just like this blatant example. Like there's this swim movie that came out like years ago that's kind of funny to me, but it's like this black guy gets in a pool and then the white guy's like, get out of here. And he says all the words that you're not supposed to say. And like, that's what people use as their baseline example for racism. But racism, it's a lot more complicated than that. It's not as simple as that. And when we look at it as just like that level of racism, we kind of do a disservice to a lot of the other racism that's honestly more effective to people in disadvantaged communities that have to deal with this every day. So like, I don't want to just sit here and give like a specific example and point to like a specific person, because it just kind of happens throughout life. And honestly, as somebody who's dealt with it my entire life, it's not even something to where I catalog it anymore and go, oh man, that was terribly racist. Like every time I log on to Twitter or check some of my YouTube comments, I'll see something that's just terrible that I just have to shrug off and move on with today.
Actually, I was interested if you've experienced any of that in your YouTube comments specifically. I know YouTube comments are, on my son's YouTube channel, I see like venom from time to time. People who don't use their real names, who hide behind avatars, and they do that on Twitter too. But have you experienced that kind of stuff in your YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, definitely. Fortunately, the tools have gotten better on social media to where a lot of that stuff kind of gets filtered out as spam before it actually gets to your eyes. But sometimes something will slip through. You'll hear something here or there. Sometimes it's just like so bad that it's kind of like it just blows your mind a little bit, like that somebody would say something like that to you. Yeah. But like, again, it's just, I think the biggest effect of it is like, it's at a point, and I'm not saying like everybody who comments on my YouTube videos does it, but it's just, after a certain while, you just get used to that there are going to be people who are going to say that and you have to ignore it. And that's kind of like when you take a step out of that as somebody who doesn't have to hear like comments about specifically why you're not qualified to talk rounds because of things that directly relate to your race. It seems crazy that you would hear something like that and then just have to be like, okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's just kind of what we deal with, I guess, like as, content creators of color.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this as well. I was like, the internet's an interesting place. Where great things can happen on the internet. People can find, life partners on the internet, and they can find friends. You and I live 1,000 miles apart, and yet, but because we share the similar interest in the Browns, we're both content creators, and we're in the same community. We've been able to meet and become friends, and that's one of the great examples of what the internet can do. But on the flip side of it, you've got a bunch of dicks out there who exist, who whether they truly believe the things that they're saying or they're just doing it because they know that it's that they're going to get a rise out of people, and they know that they can use words in a way that gets a reaction, right? And I think that one of the examples that I think about a lot is online gaming. I mean, I'm a big online gamer. Anytime that I'm not in the Brown stuff and in my free time when I'm not spending with my family, it's gaming.
Mhm.
And if you play online games, if you play multiplayer games like Call of Duty and stuff like that, if you're in a lobby with a bunch of,
Oh man,
teenage and
talk
on
about
kids,
Xbox Live back in
X,
2007. Yeah,
yeah.
that was the slaughtering ground back then.
And
But
it's the weird thing is like now that my kids are getting older and they're starting to get exposed to, the internet and gaming specifically, you have to have those conversations because they don't know what that is.
mhm.
And racism and sexism and all of the isms that exist out there, um, that are that were created to, um, inflict pain on other people, that comes out, and it's cowardice, but it comes out on those platforms, and yeah, you have to. I think the way to combat it is not by being afraid to talk about it. Number one, admit that it exists, and then teach your kids and teach other people that it's not okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think one of the most important things when we talk about these, when people like when you see the blatant examples, is I think sometimes we as a society have a hesitancy to kind of just flat out say, hey, this is unacceptable in our society. Like, I don't care what the context is, what it is around it.
right.
That's just the stuff that you're saying and the intent that you have with that's unacceptable. And a lot of times, since we're human beings, we hear something and we'll acknowledge, hey, I know that's terrible, but these are the 12 things why this person said that. And it's like, yeah, sure, that's important at some point in the conversation, but at the main point of it, it's like this can't be said. Like, we can talk about why you said it afterwards and fix that, but like at the moment of, it does have to be shut down.
Yeah.
It does have to be kind of like, this ain't gonna go down like that. Like, I've seen it on multiple times where one of my good friends who is a content creator, he just has to have these specific set of rules, and then if you break them, he just has to let you know, like, you gotta go. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like that.
Yeah.
And the more we kind of build in leniencies because we're either afraid to lose a follower or lose a portion of the audiences because we don't want to make that line that this kind of stuff is unacceptable, then the more that we allow these people who have these like terrible views
Yeah.
or just like to kind of camouflage themselves into society, and that's how that stuff kind of spreads. So I get the humanitarian reason why people don't want to just like jump on the cancel bandwagon. And I'm not saying like, oh, we just got to cancel everything. No. But what I am saying is that if somebody does something egregious, you have to make the biggest and loudest point that that's not acceptable. We can talk about everything else on the back end, but the main point of the whole conversation should always be that the thing that's unacceptable is unacceptable and not making excuses for it.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I've taken away, from listening to other people on, on social media, in, in the media itself, and then even at where I work, we had town hall type discussions, and I think the thing that I took away from it the most, because to be honest, like me personally, like I don't experience racism on a day-to-day basis myself. It's aimed at me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's probably a lot of people out there that feel the same way. And but like you were saying, when in those moments when they do occur, having the courage to say like, well, hold on a second, that doesn't work. You can't do that. And not just at the person that it's aimed at to defend themselves, but other people have that. You can no longer, after what is going on right now with the protests that are going on and everything around it, you can no longer say, I didn't know it was happening. I didn't know this existed because it didn't happen to me. right? Unless your eyes are shut right now and you're not looking around, then you're not realizing. And that's where I get it, where when people say, like, if you're not speaking up, then you're part of the problem. And that's the part of it that I do understand. And I guess I didn't understand before, and I don't think a lot of people did, was that if you're like, hey, well, I don't say those things, I don't act like that, but that's not enough. You have to recognize when you see it, and also you can't put your head in the sand. You can no longer do that. So yeah, so I agree.
Like, and one of the best examples of that, like even when it's not in the context we're speaking now, like I did a video a few months ago talking about Eric Bieniemy and why didn't Eric Bieniemy have a job? And you know, there are arguments to why Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a head coaching job that are valid, that don't have anything to do with his race. But there's a lot about that situation that does have something to do with it. And whether or not you agree with me on that front, that's not really the important part that I care about. What the part that bugged me that some people had pushback on was that race had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with it, or that if you bring up race in any way, that you're trying to make it about racism. And to certain, like, you know, if you don't experience racism on a day-to-day basis directed at you, you might think that way and you might be innocent. Like, you might not be having the malintentions on doing that kind of thing. But for me, it's like, it was kind of a frustrating thing to go through, because it would be like, you know, like, we do have to consider this one element, because I know in my day-to-day life, like, I remember trying to apply for jobs in high school, and I would have to lie about which high school I went to so people wouldn't assume my race, and like hopefully they would hire me because they thought I went to a different school and that I was a different kind of person. Like, I know that in getting a job that these things matter, because one of the things about racism, it is affects how people perceive you to be without them getting to know you. And part of that had to be some of the problem with Eric Bieniemy, or at least it should be considered, you know, to a reasonable extent. But then when you try to talk about that and people push back on you just mentioning race and say that you're divisive because you're mentioning race, or you're divisive, like, my biggest line to people is like, look, the color of my skin is not divisive. The issues that I deal with because of the color of my skin is not divisive. How you react to those things, that's what is going to be dividing us. You know, if you want to tell me to shut up about those things and I should be quiet and just, you know, it ain't nothing, that's going to be an obvious division, because you're honestly telling me to shut up about a lot of the things I've had to experience in my life. And just like the same way that if I came across somebody who was poor and white, I wouldn't want to discount their poverty that they had to grow up in, because I would understand somebody getting sensitive. I was like, oh, you're white, you always had money, you know what I mean? And made those assumptions about somebody, and they actually came from really rough circumstances, how they would feel like you're telling them to shut up about a part of their, you know, individual kind of upbringing. So, like, those are the things that kind of happen in the NFL community that always kind of bug me. And I don't think people do it as much with like bad intentions as it just like they don't experience it on a day-to-day basis. So they're like, hey, I don't get why we have to talk about race in football. But one of the things about football that we love to talk about is also how it brings us all together, well, no matter what color you are. And you can't have that opinion that football brings us together while also telling people of color to shut up about the race. So like, that's always been one of the things that I have always like dealt with, because I think honestly, the more we talk about these things and the more people feel comfortable to speak up and be like, hey, these are the things that I experience, and we can all understand the differences that we all have and have these conversations, the easier it will be for us to kind of be, you know, closer together and not be as divided. But the opinion that some people hold that just speaking on these issues is divisive, I think that is what honestly keeps us divided, because it then allows us to kind of stay in our bubble. And when something goes down, we just go to our battle stations and just throw snowballs at each other instead of actually having conversations that might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but if you're a good person, should ultimately be productive.
Right. And how much of it do you think is fear? Fear that actually causes racism and injustice to happen in the first place, and then fear that leads the emotional reaction out of people to then act a certain way online.
Yeah, so like when it comes to fear, that's where we can talk about some of the stereotypes that, black areas are dangerous, or, black people are dangerous, or the people who live in this area who happen to be black are also dangerous. And I always try to kind of fight against those stereotypes, especially in Cleveland, because like I grew up on the east side of Cleveland. And like it's like a common joke, and I don't think people mean like racist thoughts when they say this, but like it's always a joke to say like the east side's garbage, is dangerous, you know what I mean? And kind of fearmonger about the east side. But the east side is really like it's not more dangerous than something like Parma that's on the west side. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like those they're just as kind of safe situations. So like I always make a point to people like, hey, if you want to come to the east side, like I can show you places to eat. And like, some people will be naturally uncomfortable because they're not used to being on the east side of Cleveland and it's not familiar to them. But I always encourage people to come down and realize like if you just act normal, it's safe. Like it's not dangerous. Like it's not like sometimes people talk about the east side of Cleveland like it's like a war zone. And I'm like, I grew up here. Like, sure, is there dangerous stuff that happens here? But no, yes, but there is normally a set of circumstances that go along with that you don't just kind of end up around the danger. Yeah. So it's like, I always kind of push back on those kind of assumptions about an area because it's not intentional, right? If you're talking about the east side of Cleveland being dangerous, it's what you've heard, it's what you've been told. Maybe you experienced something at the wrong time and then boom, that's set in your mind. And then you're saying the east side of Cleveland is dangerous. What you're doing by doing that though, is kind of unintentionally putting this stigma on the people who live in that community, who lives predominantly in the east side of Cleveland. It's a very predominantly black part of Cleveland, especially we're talking about that like sliver before you get to like the east side of Cleveland. I'm getting like really specific without a map here, but if you're from Cleveland, you know what I'm talking about. But then it puts that stigma that, oh, this part of Cleveland's dangerous, so you should be scared while you're in this part of Cleveland. Who lives in this part of Cleveland? Black people. Who do you associate with this part of Cleveland? Black people. So now when you see a black person in your neighborhood that reminds you of somebody you saw on the east side of Cleveland, all of a sudden you're putting those same stigmas on that individual who's just walking down the damn street. Yeah. And like, I think that's why we need to be more careful. Like, are certain areas of Cleveland dangerous? Yes. I don't want to sit here and tell you that the entire east side of Cleveland is safe. Like, no, there are some areas I don't even go into. But, be careful when we're throwing this blanket out on the entire side of Cleveland or entire side of people that's saying like, oh, well, this whole side's dangerous, throw it in the garbage. Because what you're unintentionally doing is that you're putting a lot of people in harm's way or putting a lot of stigmas on people that honestly don't deserve it. A lot of people who live on the east side of Cleveland are law-abiding, tax-paying people who don't deserve to be treated like criminals under any circumstances. But
I assume there's plenty of Browns fans there.
Oh yeah, plenty of Browns fans. It's a different vibe. It's a much different vibe, but it's definitely there. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of being more aware. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can all kind of have. I can't sit here and give everybody the steps on how to end racism because I don't know how to end racism. This is a whole big issue that I don't have all the answers for. But what I can say is just like, be careful with how you stigmatize things and who falls kind of in the crossfires of that, whether you intended to or not. Be careful with how you phrase things. And like I always say, one of the things I like that I see going on is that people are making efforts to make sure that just like they don't have an environment that's unintentionally uncomfortable for Black people to be in. Like I love that I see that effort going into place. And I think that's also something that you should look at. Is there something about you or something about something that you do that you can change that makes people uncomfortable around you, and confront that
Yeah.
And instead of reacting to somebody saying, hey, that thing kind of makes me uncomfortable that you do, and be like, I ain't mean to do it. And, you know, like, just like kind of throwing that, like, and it's natural to be like, if someone's like, hey, if someone of color is like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable as a black person, you think you believe like you're not racist, you're not trying to do anything racist, like you're going to take that offense and be like, oh my God, I don't mean that. And, you know, kind of be angry at that person, but try to move past that emotion and look at what he's saying, why he's saying it, and what you can do ultimately to make him more comfortable, because that's got to be more important at the end of the day, is to make your fellow human beings feel more comfortable around each other. Like, we love to come together at Browns games, and it would be awful if somebody went to a Browns game and just felt completely uncomfortable the whole game because of something that somebody was doing. Like, that's just how
it's, you know, it's so strange. It's strange and foreign for me to think about, like, that people today in 2020 are still thinking like that and are still uncomfortable around other people based off of the color of their skin or certain. I mean, I live in Florida, right? Florida is a melting pot of cultures. There's every culture here, and in a lot of ways, I think it's one of the more, if not the most diverse area in the country. It is not just one race or ethnicity or religion or sexual orientation. It is not a bubble. Florida is everything. And between people immigrating here from other countries, the elderly moving here to retire, the Native Americans who live here, you know, the Seminole tribes and other tribes that are in Florida. I mean, it's everything. So, and I've been here for almost 20 years now. I mean, obviously from central Pennsylvania. And, you know, it's almost like you have to see it in the news. You have to see what other cities are dealing with, because it's just such a strange thing when you've been around diversity, right? But I think that reality check is a good thing, because it reminds people that, you know, it exists out there. And to not be afraid to have conversations, and not to be afraid to tell stories. I think, you know, my sister has a nonprofit, a mental health nonprofit, about trying to end the stigma. One of their missions to ending the stigma of mental health and being able to talk about mental health issues. And they do it by telling stories, and people tell their stories about things they've experienced in life, whether that's, you know, whether it was issues with addiction, or with just under the biology of mental health, abuse, all of those sorts of things that happen. And by telling stories, I think it's therapeutic, and it allows people to understand that there are instances where it might not be in your heart to be hateful, but there's ignorance in what people think and say at times, and they don't know how they're impacting other people if you're not around diversity of thought, right? So, and I think it's really interesting, and I wanted to get your thoughts too on the Browns and what's going on in Cleveland with the organization. But before, I think this kind of leads to into that a little bit. It'll help transition, is kind of what happened with Drew Brees. And I think for the people out there that are looking at the situation with Black Lives Matter, with Colin Kaepernick being back into the conversation, and with players talking about their experiences, what's going on with it, their emotions around the situation with George Floyd, and then players like Baker just coming out and saying, "Well, I'm going to kneel, like absolutely, like I'm there with my team," and for then people to come back out and go, well, you're disrespecting the flag, you're disrespecting, you know, the nation and the military and stuff like that. They're missing the point. And we saw that happen with Drew Brees when he came out and was like, "Hey, I support the movement, but I won't ever support anybody not respecting the flag and the military." And if you really think about what's going on with the movement of Black Lives Matter, and with what the players had the courage to come out and challenge one of the most powerful players on that team, in that city, in the entire league, and put him in his spot and be like, "Listen, you you don't get it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think him and his wife and all the things that they had they had to learn that lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about that. And for anybody out there, we got a guy who's sitting in my chat who just said the same thing. Like, I've been a Browns fan all my life. This guy Timothy Simpson, and when Baker and the Browns said they're kneeling for the flag, bowing down to men, and disrespecting the military and the country, I lost all respect. And I can't watch NFL football anymore. It's like, dude, you don't get it. You're mixing two different things. It's like saying, well, people are kneeling, and so I'm going to be pissed off at, and just drop it in. I'm just going to be pissed off at that. That's not
Yeah.
what they're kneeling about.
Yeah, and it's like I'll tell you some of my family background. Like my family on my father's side is a military family. Like they came up through the military. They're a Navy family. They fought. My grandfather fought in Vietnam. My great grandfather fought in World War II. And when we talk about kneeling, being disrespectful to the flag, like those are the first people in my life that were like, that's not what that's about. Like, it's not disrespectful to the flag. It's not a disrespectful act. And these are people who have literally put their lives on the line for their country. And like when we talk about these things, we act like they're not related. It's like Drew Brees, and I'm glad he learned his lesson, and it seems like he's very sincere. But I remember like what he said was like, my grandfather fought in World War II. I couldn't disrespect the flag. And like I remember when I heard that, I was like, my grandfather fought in World War II too.
Right.
But when he came back to Jim Crow in Louisiana. It was a completely, it wasn't freedom for him. He didn't come home to the picket fence and the baby boom and the freedom. He came back to oppression after fighting and dodging bullets for his country. And again, it's kind of like what I said earlier when people, they want to say that, hey, just you speaking about race is divisive or terrible, and I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Those are people who are saying that you're going to be divisive, but those are the people who are actually being divisive in the situation. They're trying to take something that we all know what it's about and try to feign, well, not try to feign, but like try to make it about some kind of disrespect to some other group.
Right.
And that's not really what the intent and what people are trying to do.
Yeah.
And, it's just like you see this all the time on Twitter where like certain people will be outraged at this, and then like the same thing that happened to a different group of people, and then they'll be outraged about something completely. Like it's never consistent. And I guess my whole point here with like Drew Brees and like kneeling being disrespectful to the flag is like at this point, why they are kneeling. It does not have anything to do with disrespect to servicemen. So if you're choosing to make it about that, that is an active choice that you have made to ignore the message that they're trying to put out. Right. And at that point, I can't really help you. Like if you don't want to watch football because people are standing up for a black issue, that's on you. But understand, that's why you're not watching football. You can say you're not watching football because somebody's disrespecting the flag. No, the reason you're not watching football is because they brought attention to a black issue that you would like to ignore. So if that's what you're comfortable with living with, whatever.
Like, I look at it like this. I mean, you're watching, if you're watching sports, and literally every sport, including golf, right? You're watching people with diverse backgrounds and different colors, right? Different sexual orientations, they're people that are probably going to be different from those people who want to say, well, you're disrespecting the flag, I'm not going to watch it. Right? And my challenge to them would be like, why are you okay watching these people perform and do something that is in a lot of ways superhuman, but they can't actually express how they feel? These are people that have gained wealth and the kind of changes in life that all the fame and money brings, but you don't want to give them the ability to share with you what their experiences are like. And I think that's really that's absolutely part of the problem, right? So
Yeah, it's like Marshawn Lynch used to sit during the national anthem, right? Like this is the biggest example to why, like, when people tell me it's about the flag, I've always kind of felt like it wasn't like you weren't listening at the very least. But like Marshawn Lynch sat for the national anthem that entire year, everything else was going on. The difference between him and Colin Kaepernick is Colin Kaepernick explained why he did not stand for the anthem and made it and said, hey, I'm doing this in protest of police brutality. Mm-hmm. Marshawn Lynch just didn't talk to the media about it. So nobody made a big deal about it because nobody could act like Marshawn Lynch was saying something that he wasn't. But the second that same action was done with Colin Kaepernick, and then oh, he's doing this for a police brutality issue, then all of a sudden, the pushback comes with it's about the flag and everything else. And, it's just like kind of this borderline frustration that some Black folks have with kind of society is that, like, every time we try to voice our frustration within the rules of society, it's like we get shouted down back at, you know what I mean? Where we say Black Lives Matter, some people say all lives matter and try to like drown us out. We kneel for the anthem. They make it about disrespecting the flag, and they just completely bull over the issue that we're trying to bring attention to. Right. And it's just that kind of frustration that exists whenever we try to speak out. People try to shout over us and tell us to shut up, or tell us that athletes shouldn't be able to use their platform in certain ways, and pretty much try to direct how people use a platform that they have worked their entire lives to build and they've earned, quite frankly. Right. So
I think that the perfect example of that was the video that was going around where the woman from Fox News who had said that that KD and LeBron should shut up and dribble, and then with the Drew Brees, they ask her about that situation, and she's like, he's expressing his opinion, and it's like it's that sort of hypocrisy that exists that you're sitting there going, I mean, how do you not draw the correlation between that not being about race? I mean, I can't do that. Like, I can't understand that.
Yeah, and it's like, in general, and I don't want to say any specific player names, but like there are players that we know how they feel, and they're on the other side of me on some of these things, right? I never do, and if you watch my videos, you would know, like, I'm one of the more pro player guys who talk sports on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But like, I never sit there and tell a player what they should be able to express on their platform or try to tell them how to handle it, even when they disagree with me on how they should use it, because I believe that you build your platform, you can use your platform for whatever you see fit. It is your platform, and we live in a country with freedom of speech. Right. But it's always like, it's never a pushback on like somebody like, hold on, wait, there's something going. But like, it's never a pushback on, like Joe Thomas, I think in 2007, and I don't know where he's at now, but I remember in 2007, I remember having this conversation with my dad because Joe Thomas had endorsed John McCain, and my dad was upset with that. But I was like, he's well within his right to do that. Whether you agree with it or not, that's one thing. But like, to tell him you shouldn't do that because you play on the Browns, that would be a ridiculous take to have. And, it's like that understanding is well known when it comes to white players. But like, if it's a Black player giving it their opinion on something, then we get shouted down back at, like, you're a basketball player, not a politician, and you should shut up and all this. And LeBron, I don't want to hear anything you talk about unless it's about basketball. Or even you see this happen in like something small like sports talk. I'll notice this happen a lot. Or like, if it's somebody who was a football player, mm-hmm. I notice that normally when they're Black, they're more likely to get these kind of comments where it's like, oh, why are you talking about basketball? You play football. As if like a person's knowledge is all just about one specific thing, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
now, meanwhile, half of the just the people that are on TV that are just the commentators, the Sports Center guys, never played anything anyway. They're just broadcasters, right? So they have nice voices. They speak clearly without saying and stuttering, but that guy is qualified to talk about all the sports. The Colin Kaepernick played high school footballs and in Washington or wherever he's from, so he can talk about all the sports. But if you're an ex-athlete, you can only talk about that one. I mean, I think that's hilarious.
It's always funny to me. Like, I remember this was happening to Jalen Rose back in the day. People are like, Jalen Rose talk about football? He's a basketball player. And then, like, at 5 o'clock, the Colin Coward show. I'm like, what the hell did Colin Coward do? Like, to earn this extra credit? And or, like, people will be like, oh, you can't talk about football. You're a basketball player. As if playing in the NBA disqualifies them to talk about any other sport. Meanwhile, dude saying that played in no professional sports.
Now, this is one thing, right? And this has bothered me for a really, really long time, and nobody ever calls Colin Coward out for this, right? I'm a Virginia Tech guy. I went to Virginia Tech. I went to Virginia Tech with Michael Vick, right? And his brother, right? I've been around like that whole thing with Michael Vick when that was going on. I was still rocking the number 7 jersey with his name on the back in public when that was happening, and people saying stuff to me about it. Obviously this is because of dogfighting, not because of anything with racism, right? But my point is, Colin Coward comes out and is like, and says, that's it. He's done. And this is before he was convicted, all this stuff. He will never take another snap in the NFL. He's done. He just said, he dug his grave and said, that's it. You're out. And was adamant. And I remember listening to that. And I had listened to Colin. And I liked Colin. I thought he was entertaining. He was one of the better broadcasters on the radio at the time. Him, Jim Rome, those type of guys. And I think back on that, and I don't remember Colin Coward ever saying that about Ben Roethlisberger. I don't remember him saying that about Brett Favre when Brett Favre was going through, the things that he was going through. And for some reason, Colin gets a pass on certain things like that. And those are like little instances that it's like, how are you going to say that it's over for Michael Vick? He goes, he serves his time, he does his stuff, he comes back, he gets paid again, right? And with the Eagles and then, with the Steelers and stuff, he gets paid again. I never heard Colin come out and go, you know what? I was wrong about Michael Vick. And that was a mistake. And I think that's one of the problems I have with that guy, other than his hot take type thing and the fact that he riles on the Browns because he knows it riles us all up and gets us pissed off. But the fact that when he is wrong and when he's wrong about certain things like that, which I think that's a problem
too, where he'll be like wrong about something the entire time, and he'll come on there and be like, "I was actually right the whole time." You know what I mean? Like that's the biggest Colin Coward trick. And honestly, he's just like, he's kind of a troll. I've just stopped paying attention to him, to be honest. I've just stopped caring about what Colin Coward has to say about anything. But it's just like
I hate that because I love when you go. That's the reason I watch your channel. When I saw on Reddit like your take on Colin Coward, I was like, holy shit, you're right. I'm like, you're exactly right. And you called him, and I would love to know if he's seen your videos and what his reaction to them would be. I would love to know that.
Somebody claiming to be Colin Coward on a YouTube account saying that it was him, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't him. But yeah, it's just like with Colin, I've just realized what the formula is. And if you're a Bengals fan watching this, by the way, watch out. He's coming for you because Joe Burrow is his next Baker Mayfield type target. He's already planting the seeds for that. So just watch out for that one. But yeah, I mean, like every time I make a Colin Coward video, the problem I came up on was like, I'm saying the same exact thing I said in the last video. And it's like, how many times can I just regurgitate what I said about Colin Coward in order to get the point out? It's at a certain point, I don't want to be the guy who's always saying the same exact thing. So I'm waiting for something new to pop off with him, or something something more interesting before I go in on him, because like it's, if you watch my channel, if you watch those 2 videos, well, the 3 or 4 videos I did on Colin Cowherd, you know exactly what my thoughts are on whenever he says something stupid.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like, and the funny thing with media too, because I've witnessed this one like recently, is like they don't like when somebody tries to, like, you know, when I make a video about Colin Cowherd and I'm pretty much like holding him accountable for some of the dumb stuff he said, they get real mad when you do that to them, because that breaks some code of media or whatever. Like, and like, to me, it's like, you guys do the same thing to athletes, right? If Baker Mayfield has a bad game, you sit there and you dissect why he's terrible at his job, and you talk about it for like 3 hours, and you make a ton of money off of it. So to me, hey, it's an open book. If somebody wants to make a 20-minute deep dive on why I'm terrible at YouTube, I'm all for it. That is the internet at its best. But some people can't take the criticism when it comes their way, and then they get all petty about it, which has kind of been hilarious to watch. No names, please.
No, I think you know, it's interesting. You know, I've had conversations with other content creators, and I firmly believe we are experiencing a time that anybody can be a broadcaster. If you have OBS and a laptop or a computer with a webcam, and I mean, everybody has a microphone on it, you don't have to have a giant production. You just have to have something interesting to say and a point of view. And you could do the same thing that they do on ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or your local, you know, radio station. You're really just having conversations about the Browns. You've got a channel that you talk and you give your thoughts on what are happening with the Browns, the NFL, etc. My channel is a little bit different. I'm more like post game reaction and hype video type stuff, but it still goes to show, if you have any level, just the smallest level of technical skill set and the will to do it, I mean, how many Browns podcasts exist today? Like, if I had a nickel for every Browns every new Twitter handle that came up, like, we're the new Browns, we're the #1 Browns podcast, and blah blah blah. And the thing is, it's like, it doesn't take much. If you want to be a broadcaster, you can. I feel like the media is threatened by that, because you can see our analytics. You can see right there how many views I get on a video, how many views you get, how many times something's been seen on TikTok or Twitter or whatever. It's all right there to see, right? You know, so when I get into arguments with people, I've noticed recently on Twitter, if I say something to people in the media, I don't know if it's now because I have a little bit of a following, or, you know, somewhat of an audience now, that they see that, even though I'm not I'm not verified or anything, and they want to jab back. And what I've noticed is, not to say that my audience comes to my defense or anything like that. I try to make sure that I'm in the right when I'm getting involved in a conversation with somebody with a lot more followers, a member of the media. But I noticed that they really like to go back at me, which,
well, it's like, it's I remember, I think Roy Wood Jr., he's a stand-up comedian. He was on a podcast. He was talking about, like, this happens with comedians when they get mad at people who get big on TikTok and they start doing stand-up comedy. And it's like, it's like you're standing in a grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. And you switch to a line, and then the second you switch to that line's popping. Everybody's getting through. You're not waiting, while the other person who decided they was going to stay in this line got to watch everybody else get through and get everything they want to get done. So they mad that they in that line. And I think that's just what happens with media. Like, a lot of people, there are people like I went to school with that have, like, I know personally, that have been kind of bitter towards my success on the platform, or kind of like dismissive of it. And like, it to me, it's just, it seems like it's like, oh, well, I worked and did this and then worked 3 years as an intern where they paid me absolutely nothing, and then they did that. I did it the right way, and you're doing a shortcut. But it's like, nah, I just figured it out a little bit faster than you, and now you're still trying to do, you know, what everybody told you to do. And it's like, that's why, you know, I think one of the big things is just a life thing. where it's like, don't be a follower, be a leader. It's like, it's always good to listen to advice. I've always listened to advice of people who've done things before me, but it's also like, don't structure your life completely based off of somebody who had their experience 20 years before you, because the world's not the same. And, you know, I know a lot of people who did everything that their college professor told them specifically to do. And I remember sitting in classes like, I respect what you're saying, but I feel like there's something on the internet that I can achieve here and get to a similar place.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, it's just people looking at you like, man, you know, why he get to have a show? Why he get to have an audience? You know, I've been working hard. And they assume just because you took the other one, that like you're not working hard. And it's just, at this point, I'm not at the point where I'm upset about it anymore. It's just kind of funny to me when I see it happen. It's like, look, man, if you was nice, I would help you get here too. Like, I'm gonna help you get to this line too. Like, but you know, if you want to be bitter about the situation, that's whatever. You know, I'm not about to work at your radio station for $12,000 a year. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I remember I interned in DC at CNN when I was just finishing college. My last internship was at CNN, where I worked on Wolf Blitzer's show. That's for a summer. And at the end of it, I'm like, well, I'm going to graduate. So I want to be, you know, I'm in a position where I'm going to need a job. You know, like these other kids that were trying to be on air talent and do all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of younger kids and who still had years to go. And I remember talking to their, the HR people, and the woman actually accepted me into the program. And she was like, look, there's two ways you can go. You can go down to Atlanta and you can apply for the VJ position, which is, I think, $22,500 a year. And it's definitely not guaranteed. And like, there's nothing, like, we can't guarantee you do anything, but, and there was all this stuff that you had to do to get in there. Or you can stay here, you can give us your number, and during the summers for the next 5 to 10 years, we're gonna call you when we need you, and you're gonna answer phones here at CNN, and then you might get one thing to produce a year for the next like 5 or 6 years to build up your portfolio, to then take it to another news station to say, this is what I've done. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, my family doesn't live, my sister lived in DC, but there's no way that I was going to live with my sister. Like, that wasn't going to work. She wasn't going to allow me to stay, like, live with her for free anyway. My parents didn't live there. And I'm like, how do you survive on this? Right. Mm-hmm. And for the people that are out there that are like, well, why does he, like, you took a short, if anybody thinks you took a shortcut, I'd be like, man, if it was so easy to get people to follow you or to subscribe to your channel or to listen to what you're saying or watch your stuff, everybody would do it. It's not easy to do. There's no shortcuts to this.
It's never the people, like, you know what I mean? It's never the people that you listen to. You're like, they could probably, you know, figure this out if they could. It's always the people that whenever you look at, like, hey, man, you here because somebody in the higher ups of your network loves you for whatever reason, and they're giving you this platform, and you mad. But I'm like, I don't know necessarily if you can do what it is that some people have to do on this platform, because, you know, it's like, to me, this is kind of like pro wrestling, where you got a character, well, not a character, but you have a persona, and you have to go into these empty rooms essentially on the internet and get people to follow you and care about your character and persona and whatever. So, like,
well, let me ask you this: when you first started making your videos about the Browns, because you started doing stuff on YouTube before that, where you're talking about, you know, acting and trying to, you know, the different kind of experiences with that, and then you got in, and I really think the Colin Cowherd stuff might have kicked it off. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
there.
It was. That was it.
But that,
because I mean, had done a couple Browns videos before that.
Yeah.
That didn't do anything.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, it wasn't, your success wasn't by accident. Like, you came out with you had an amazing point of view on that. It was entertaining. It was the right tone, the right length. The production value was there for it, and that sparked it to grow. But I do think, now, on the flip side of it, right? On the flip side, I do think that there are ways that people can jumpstart their YouTube or content creating type world, right? I feel like I was helped a lot. Brown's Twitter helped my channel a lot. Brown's Reddit early on helped my channel a lot. When I got retweeted by, the guys at Big Play like Dave and McNeil, Reflog, when I got those guys that accepted me into like the Browns Twitter community, that gave me, I think, a little legitimacy, and also it helped with the views a little bit. But I will tell you, interestingly enough, that if I look at my analytics, I don't know if your analytics are the same, but something like 30 to 40% of my external traffic from YouTube is on Facebook. And that's a platform I spend almost zero time on.
Yeah, my advice to anybody who wants to become a YouTuber, I always tell them this because the people's instincts are generally like more traditional, and it's not really useful with YouTube. But like whenever you make a YouTube channel, right, what's the first thing that people do? They go and they post it on their Facebook and they're like, hey, friends, follow me on YouTube. I'm going to make this content. Be my friends and subscribe to me on there. And I tell people like, yeah, you could do that, but like focus your efforts on building on the platform and figuring out what specifically works on the platform. Like my Twitter feed is not like just me posting out links to my YouTube channel. I post stuff on Twitter specifically to entertain the audience on Twitter because I have to build my Twitter on Twitter, on that platform. I can't just use YouTube to build Twitter, or else I have a bunch of people who follow me who don't care. And on YouTube, it's even more important because there's an algorithm, how videos get pushed out, how your thumbnails should or should not look. And it's like, I tell everybody who wants to do YouTube, they're like, I don't know how I'm gonna find an audience. You literally just have to get there and build it. Like, just build it. And if you put out good content and you start to use the right thumbnails, eventually, hopefully, you'll get pushed by the algorithm, or somebody on some Reddit thread will find you and push you like that. But it's a long game. It's a hard game. It's a long game. But anybody looking to do YouTube, that's my biggest piece of advice, is that you focus how you build on the platform, which includes, like, if you're a football player, what are you going to do? You're going to watch a ton of tape to get better. What do? I'm like a maniac on YouTube. I watch like 6 hours of YouTube a day where I'm just like, ooh, I like that thumbnail. I like how they doing that. Oh, okay, this is how they pushing this. Like, I have gotten my master's degree in YouTubeology, so to say, to where I'm studying this frequently.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. You need to study the platform that you want to be successful on, instead of just posting there and be like, well, people should watch. Like, nah, buddy, like that's not how that's gonna go.
No.
You need to be extremely focused and understand exactly, one, what audience are you trying to grab? Two, what kind of videos does that audience used to? What can you bring new to that form? And then on top of all of that, how are you going to sell it to them? Like, that's why I think one of my successes on my channel has been, as of late, is that I am somebody who's going to make Browns videos with good production quality that you don't have to stumble through, and like that are edited well, that are going to have a lot of charts and information on some takes, and also it's formatted like a YouTube channel. So 10 to 20-minute videos, 20 minutes max. It's easy to listen to. I make sure that if you can just go through on one run, or if you want to put it on 2x speed, that it's going to make sense and still be audible. And it's also, I know exactly what the market is and what the deficiency is in the market, because if you want quality Browns content, there are a lot of YouTube channels that are trying to figure it out right now that are doing well for themselves. And then there's the Browns YouTube channel, and then there's a giant gulf in between. And for Browns fans, I know you're not going to always want to hear Nathan Zagura necessarily, because he works for the Browns at the end of the day. So there's a level of objectivism that you just can't expect, and it's not fair to expect from him. That there's this whole kind of gulf of viewers that you can grab there. And I think sports talk is going to move towards YouTube as times get further on. I think football has a lot of room to grow in that area, seeing it's just the biggest sport, but it doesn't have a presence. Like, I don't know if you're an NBA fan, but like NBA YouTube is incredible. It's incredible. There are 45 videos about like one specific stat of Giannis that you can watch. Like, it's in, and they're all high quality. Like, NBA YouTube is incredible.
Yeah,
NFL
you know what?
YouTube.
The NFL YouTube, and I was telling a friend of mine, NFL YouTube, I feel like it's gonna get there. I feel like there's a wave that we're kind of catching, right? Where it's happening.
It's coming.
It's coming, right? It's coming, and you're right. I don't think NFL's quite gotten there yet. When we, you know, when I wanted to do the NFL draft thing, right? And I came up with this big concept for this. This is how we're gonna go out and I'm gonna find YouTubers for every channel, and I'm gonna have them pick the player for that, and we're going to do this whole role-playing thing where they're going to trade players or trade picks and really have it be like a real mock draft where everybody would have everybody's contact information. I was going to bring on people, deals were going to be worked out, and that's what I was going to use. And the problem was I literally could not find 32 guys or girls.
Oh, yeah,
I couldn't do it.
Where it's like one of the ones I was shocked I couldn't find. I was trying to do like a Patriots pregame video one time, and I could not find a single like prominent Patriots YouTuber like that talks about Patriots. Like there are some guys that are definitely out there, like Tom Grossi or Grossi. I don't know if he's the same last name as Tony, but Tom Grossi for the Packers. Yeah, for the Packers, he's there. He's prominent. I know there's guys like Voch Lombardi that are Cowboys fans, and certain fan bases have it. Pittsburgh has some of it. Baltimore definitely has
Baltimore
it.
has it. Oh, yeah.
Cincinnati.
Yep.
I know my guy Ace who does that. But then, like, you start to get
Flemlo?
into, like, yeah, Flemlo, also Cincinnati guy. But then you start to, like, spread out and try to find, like, you know, the Seattle Seahawks guy, and it's almost impossible to find.
The Vikings? Like, I mean, there are just –
I've seen them.
It's like, but that's like they have a guy, right?
Yeah.
It's like one guy. So I was talking to my friends, you know, who like other teams, and I'm like, look, it's really not that hard. It's all the software's free, and all you have to do is copy a code from YouTube in, and you can spark it up and go. You know, when the optimization, like you were talking about with thumbnails and how the algorithm works, search engine optimization, all that stuff can come later. But if you just want to have, you know, your opinion out there, it can exist. You can do it. It's just the NFL hasn't. And I also thought, I was like, I wonder if people are afraid of the NFL from the, you know, no descriptions and blah 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 of the games, like they always say on the pregame. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I look at it like.
I honestly think it's more or less like just the age of the audience. Like the NFL generally like has older fans, and then like there are younger, like people watch it as a family. The NBA is a little bit different, where it's like a lot of young dudes watch that, and young dudes like to get their opinion out there and are willing to just put a whole YouTube video up, kind of like how I did about why they don't like something. So it's like, boom, that's how that whole community gets started. Also, with like basketball, I think it's easier because, the NBA has, like, made more of a push to be good on social media and, like, to do those things. So, like, if you're a basketball fan, it's kind of natural. Like, if somebody has a big game, LeBron goes off for 40 points, you go to YouTube, and you're like, yo, LeBron, 40 points, search that and go to YouTube to find your content. With the NFL, the traditional mindset is more or less if the Browns have a big game, we're still doing the thing where like, hey, let's tune in to Sports Center.
Yep.
See the Browns on Sports Center. Oh yeah, like, you know, we get hype about that. But I think as time goes on and younger fans become older, more and more people are going to be like, and as we continue to build the community, because that's why I'm always big on. Like, I'm always telling people, like, oh, if you need help, let me know. I'll help you build up whatever it is that you need to help build. Because I think the more and more content creators we have that do YouTube stuff, the more people are going to be like, YouTube's a place to go to get my sports fix.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, more and more people after the game are going to be like, let me check out YouTube. And then boom, that's where you get everything. And like, I'm going to get like super into it real quick. I've been dying to say this, but like, if you look at like the areas of YouTube that are giant, it's because there is no mainstream network that dominates it.
Yep.
Like gaming is huge on YouTube. There's no, like the G4N used to be the gaming network when I was a kid. That doesn't exist anymore. That hasn't existed for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that space has been dominated by people just clicking on YouTube to find out something about a game. Mm-hmm. Another one, phones. Technology, but specifically just like phones. It's one of the most massive sectors on YouTube. It's just dudes doing phone reviews. Like Marquez Brownlee has like 11 million subscribers.
Dude, he just does MKBHD, man. That guy, that what he has done, and that community. He's got a community just like we have a community. You know, they have that community of Marquez and Austin Evans and Lou from Unbox Therapy. Like all those guys are all part of like your average consumer is another guy who's great with that. And you're right. And there's also for me, like I watch those guys too. And like when you were saying that you spend like 4 to 6 hours on YouTube, I don't pay. I actually pay for YouTube TV, but that's because my wife likes to watch like reality TV shows, right? But I don't. I watch YouTube. Every morning I get up, I watch. Mostly it's either sports related or it's like tech related stuff. So. Like Linus Tech Tips is a guy. Jay's 2 cents. Are you familiar with Jay's 2 cents at all?
Yeah, he's like a PC, but like there's all kind of different sectors in it where like there's like the PC guys, like okay, like I'm about to get really nerdy, but like you know when Zen 3 popped off, you're like, oh, do I need to switch my motherboard out? Do I need to go upgrade because I just got Zen 2? Well, Zen Plus is what they called it.
Yeah.
You know, for the new Ryzen, I'm like, you have a whole community of guys that you're like, I don't even need to bother with television.
Dude,
I got 5 different channels that do this, and like. That's what I really would like the NFL community to do is like, because sometimes people get into it with this like competition mindset, and I get it. I'm competitive too, but if you fight for a slice in a pie that's tiny, you're not gonna get nothing. I always fight to make sure the pie is much larger, and with the NFL, that pie can be absolutely massive if we all kind of like have a network with each other. We're like, hey, you know, we're going to talk about these things and. You have the guys that you go like, then it's starting to build where you have the film analysis guys here, and then you have more or less the commentary guys like myself, and then you have the strict like always going to be talking about like their specific team guys. That's kind of me. That's also other guys like Ace that I follow that strictly talk about the one team. And you're starting to see us find like. It's like the beginning of civilization. Our buildings are starting to grow, and we're starting to realize, like, oh, okay, you're there. Okay, I see you. Yep. And we're starting to have that conversation with each other. But that's one of the things I think the tech sector of YouTube has done so well is that since they see each other at all these events, they were like, hey, let's collab, let's do this, let's build each other. And now, whenever you get whenever you're looking at a new phone, there used to be websites like back in the day, young folks, Zoomers watching this. There used to be websites where you would have to go into and plug your phone in and you would have to figure out for yourself why you care about if this phone has 2 gigahertz clock speed and this one has 2.3, or why this is a single core and that matters, or how much RAM it has. Now you just literally type in the phone that you want to buy, and then there's like 400 videos.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it's like,
there's a guy, so I'm big into the tech stuff, right? I'm actually building a new computer right now, and it's a Browns. So I tweeted a little bit about it, but the theme of the computer is Odell's Rolls Royce, right? So like, there's some stuff. I'll give you another little tiny taste of what this is gonna be. So if this is the Ozzie Newsome, right? This guy's gonna get a paint job. Right, so this is going to be the centerpiece that's going to sit right in the middle, and I'm going to try to get like a lazy Susan to like rotate him around. But I've been staring at him, and I finally got all the parts and everything like that to do this. And it's because I watch those guys. I watch like the Linus and Jay's 2 cents and all the guys that talk about that stuff. And so get this, a couple of months ago, I guess it was like back in December. It's like half the year's gone. Back in December, my sister comes down, and we're at Universal Studios because I was living here in Orlando. It was pre-COVID. And we're walking around Universal Studios. I'm walking with my dad, and just walking around the park. It wasn't a busy day, and it was a little overcast. And Jay from Jay's 2 cents is walking right at me in Orlando, Florida. and I stop him, and I think he could tell too. He's like, oh God, I just got recognized. But he's walking right at me, and I just stare at him. I go, Jay, and he goes, yeah. I go, hey man, I was like, I was starstruck. It was like I saw, you know, like Odell or Nick Chubb or something like. And I was like, hey, I'm a huge fan. I was like, can I please get a picture with you? And his kids are there, and his kids are like, what is going on? His daughter was like looking at me all weird, like but I sat there and I was like, no, I was like, this is a YouTube guy that I watch every one of his videos that he does. And obviously it's different. And so I tweeted it and I was like, hey, I'm a YouTuber myself. But it was like, I mean, obviously when nowhere near that caliber, but I think you're right, man. I think that those things exist, and to have this group, and Twitter exists to a degree. Twitter's more about like, there's a community on Twitter that's like really strong and vocal. And I think like you and I are definitely a part of that, like part of the Illuminati Browns Twitter, like the back end Browns Twitter talking. And it's really interesting to see, because they're not all content creators, but then because they're so vocal on Twitter and because they get recognized so much, because they're always participating in the conversations, they've gone and they started creating their own content, right? And whether that's like podcasts or stuff like that, but just to add a little bit of color to what you were saying about the channel specifically, I think you're absolutely right. I thought mistakenly that, okay, I'll be able to take my Twitter audience and drive them to YouTube and be like, hey, I'm live or this or that. And number one, Twitter and YouTube, obviously, since they're not the same property, like they don't want you taking eyeballs off of one platform to another platform. They don't want you to do that. And even the videos, when you put your video on Twitter and you link it, it doesn't automatically expand. It's like it's shown, but you have to like click onto it, so it doesn't show the same way. It doesn't autoplay.
You gotta lie to Twitter and put a picture of your thumbnail, upload it on Twitter, and then put the link to YouTube. And like, got you, Twitter.
So I look at it like this. An eyeball is an eyeball, right? And I get analytics. We have access to analytics on Twitter, just like we have analytics on YouTube, right? So when I talk to sponsors, when I try to go out and get people for Patreon and stuff like that, I say, hey, I'll show you my analytics. And, you know, surprisingly, even though Twitter's not known as much as a video platform, I'm getting a ton of views on Twitter and I just try to keep my the time, you know, around to the 2 minutes and 20 seconds. When you're making a hype video, it doesn't really work within 2 minutes and 20 seconds a lot of times. So I got to like do some magic with that. But yeah, you're right. I think the more that you focus onto one platform. Before I got into YouTube, I was for about a year, almost 2 years, I streamed on Twitch and playing PUBG. And I was big into PUBG, just like right now I happen to be big into Warzone, but Battle Royale was getting big, and I streamed on Twitch and never really had that much of an audience. I mean, I did giveaways, I did all the normal stuff that you should do, and never had any more than 5 or 6 people watching at any given time. I mean, it was like pretty sad for the amount of effort I was putting into it. And then and so now there are websites out there, and I try to give advice to people that are trying to become content creators as well. And like, what do you do? What do you focus on? How do you do it? And the number one thing that I tell people is focus on quality and make the thing that you yourself would want to watch or listen to. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for you, for your stuff, like I was telling you, I was doing the Quincy Carrier workout program, where I would just turn on. I had my phone with the Bluetooth on my the headset, put it on the treadmill, and for the first 10 minutes of my 30-minute treadmill was because your videos are usually between 10 and 13 minutes depending upon what was going on with it, and I'm like, God damn it, I'm going to actually physically run for at least 5 miles per hour during the entire time when Quincy was talking. And then when Quincy stops talking, that's where I take a break, walk for a little bit, catch my breath, and go on from there. Right. So you can, but that's the thing about YouTube. Like you can, if you have quality content, people will come back. There will always be an audience for quality. And don't make what I tell people, don't make the thing that you think somebody wants.
Yeah, you
Make
got to make
what you want, right?
it's like with the whole Colin Coward thing. Like that's a huge thing I tell people. It's like make that video that you search for but could not find. Like that was the Colin Coward video for me, because you type in, before I did my series of Colin Coward videos, it was like Colin Coward bad, and it was like one dude, like, you know, and it's like, okay, I'm not trying to hear. But then I watched this Colin Coward take because it was in that link, and I was like, this is the worst. What is he talking? It was even comparing RG3 to Baker Mayfield. And like, as I'm watching this, I like to argue to begin with, so I'm taking notes about like, this is stupid. And I was like, oh, this is a video. I would watch this. Yeah, and I just recorded it, put it up there, and then other people were like, yeah, that's something I would watch too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's the biggest thing. It's like people worry so much about, well, what's going to get views, what's going to get so much success early on. It's like, it don't work like that. You gotta, like on the internet, one of the beautiful things about the internet, and like it's just give or take, is that in order to have success on the internet, people have to feel like you're authentic about what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have a ton of authenticity, you're not gonna make it long term on the internet.
Yeah.
So like you have to make something that you want to make. You know what I mean? Like in television, you have that luxury where like your boss is making you talk about this, so boom, you just do that and you'll be fine because it's the network that's your platform, not you. But on the internet, your platform's more personal. So, you know, you have to make content that you want to make, that you want to watch, that you want to listen to, and hope that other people agree with you that you want to do that. And that's like the biggest key to success on this whole platform. To any of the younglings out there wondering how to make it, I'm gonna sound like a super old guy. Make that Minecraft video.
Yeah. Minecraft. You know what the funny thing was? Like when I first started off my channel, I made like a couple of the hype videos, and the Avengers one, the first one that I did was the one that the news picked up on, and it really exploded it, and it got it going. But it was a brand new channel, so it had one video that had 100,000 views, right? Which is great, it's cool. But as I made more and more of them and kept coming up with ideas and getting inspired to do stuff, and then after I had about, I don't know, 5 to 6 of them, I would sit there during the football season when it's like Browns are like pumping in your blood, right? And I'd sit there, wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and I would sit there and watch my own videos. And I'm like, you know, if I looked at my own stuff, I'm like, I must be pumping my own numbers up somehow because I've watched them hundreds of times. But I watched them because I wanted that experience, right? I wanted to actually see the Browns with, you know, Star Wars music in the background, or the Browns with, you know, Top Gun theme behind it, stuff like that. And that for me, I was like, hey, it's cool if people watch it. It's cool if people subscribe to it. But ultimately, I wanted to just have something that I personally liked and I wanted to watch. And then the rest of the channel was just about me and my dad talking about what the Browns do before and after the game. Like, that's it. You know, it's like
that you want to watch. You know, it's kind of the biggest thing in the whole YouTube equation. Like because I get people who know I do this for a living, and they're like, "Well, how do you get successful at it? How did you decide what content you're gonna make?" Dude, I literally just made something I wanted to watch. Like it's just. And like I guess like if you're not somebody who lives on the platform as much as I do or you do, it's like it's not as easy to make that jump. So I try to like make it make sense to people. But like that's the biggest key into it. Like Marquez Brownlee probably just wanted to see a phone review. Like, and he reviewed his own phone, and then boom, you know, all this stuff happened afterwards, you know. So again, like whenever I see somebody in the comment section, why isn't nobody talking about this? And they put like a 3-pager in the comment section. I'm like, hey man, I appreciate that you're commenting on my video, but that sounds like you got a video that you need to make. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like you got something that you want to get out there that you should, you know, see if you can make that video because you obviously have the passion behind it. So, you know, there's a lot of passionate Browns fans out there. There's a lot of, and I think Browns are one of the bigger teams when it comes to this online stuff because the team is actually like pretty social media savvy for an NFL team. They also have been up front on YouTube with like building the Browns and all of that. But yeah, man. But I have to go soon, so
Yeah,
I'll wrap up.
we should probably wrap up. We've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes. So I know we started off going down, everything going on with the craziness of the world, and now we just started nerding out on
Yeah,
technology and YouTube.
to get two YouTubers together, they can't do anything but talk about YouTube.
I know it is, man. Well, hey, it's Friday night. I'm sure I don't really have much to do. I got 3 kids, but I'm sure you have some stuff to do. So I'll let you go. But I want to say again, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for talking to me about, just the things that you're experiencing and things that you feel. And I think the rest of the world out there needs to hear more things like that. And I appreciate it. And as always, I'm a giant fan. Your show and your channel has inspired me, which in a lot of ways changed my life. And got me to meet people I never would have met and become friends with other people. And that it is a ripple effect. It's like one of those things. Spread positivity, spread your love and your passion for certain things, because you don't know who you're impacting, and you impacted me, and I've impacted other people. So it's crazy how the world works if you're staying positive and sticking to that kind of thing. So appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, guys, go Browns. We'll leave it at that, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Definitely.